Welcome to Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. Welcome to the Day Weather Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Day Weather Podcast today. Well, windy again. Yep, I'm afraid we're going to have to deal with one more day of high winds. Then it gets colder, but remember, when you want to warm up in the winter around here, you're going to get windy. When you want the wind to stop, it's got to get colder. Along I-25 and I-80 today, there are a lot of high wind warnings in effect for parts of Nebraska and Wyoming. Along Interstate 80 and I-25 into Wyoming. Blowover risk again with us today. Now, there is a Pacific storm system in front coming in tonight that's going to persist into early Thursday. That is going to bring about some colder temperatures. A little bit of front range snow in Colorado. We'll show you that here in a minute. Pattern stays active this weekend and into next week. As we get into early March, the weather pattern stays busy. This is where we are with today's jet stream winds, an upper level pattern. The jet stream carving out a trough again across the western United States, but the jet stream winds are right here where you see all those black lines where there's a big contrast between the cold up here and the warmer here. And where you get that contrast, you have a big change in air pressure, so you're going to have a lot of very strong winds aloft. These strong winds aloft are hitting the Continental Divide basically in a perpendicular fashion, so you're going to get strong winds on the plains, and that's exactly what we have right now. Snowfall-wise, I want to show you the forecast for snow through Friday afternoon. This area here I want to highlight. This is a little episode that's going to happen late Wednesday into Thursday morning that Colorado folks are going to want to watch. You can see the mountain areas continuing to get snow and a little bit of snow on the plains up here. But these Pacific systems, like they've done all winter, tend to hit the mountains, but not much left for the low elevations. However, we're going to have a little bit of a snow event for the I-25 corridor from about Cheyenne down to Trinidad and Raton Pass here. Denver and Colorado Springs, in particular, the Palmer Divide, the I-25 corridor stretch here and along I-70 as well. Well, it looks like overnight Wednesday to Thursday morning, there's going to be just enough snow to be a real nuisance. So if you got to travel into Colorado late tomorrow through midday Thursday, you're going to run into some travel problems. Same to be said for the I-70 corridor into Colorado's mountains as well. It's a small little system, but one that will be impactful nonetheless. This is it right here. This is for Wednesday night with a little bit of a low moving into Utah. Slides eastward. It's not a really strong system, but it's just going to go right on top of the Colorado Front Range. Here's the next system coming in behind it. As we get into Friday afternoon, high pressure strengthens in the Gulf of Alaska. So you know what that means? When there's a ridge up there, we go into the fridge. So winds aloft are coming in from the northwest again, and colder air is going to come in for the second half of the week. Notice the robustness. This is just a very robust polar vortex again. That is some extremely cold air in northern Hudson Bay. So there's a lot of very cold air up there still. And we're going to have to continue to monitor that as we get on into March. So by Friday afternoon, a trough gets carved out. It gets a little bit colder. By Sunday, though, look at the change. Quite a change. This little system that's up here that's really, you can't really see it in the flow, carves out a trough and it forms it right in the base of Southern California. This is by Sunday morning. As I showed you in yesterday's podcast, when you get lows this close together, this guy kicks out this guy and will send it off to the northeast. So as we get into the weekend, as this system comes down the west coast, there may be a little bit of snow shower activity, winter activity in terms of snow showers here during the course of the day Saturday, with low digging into Southern California by Sunday. By Monday afternoon, that low kicks northeast into northeastern Colorado. Now we need to keep an eye on this pattern right here, because this system right here could be a weather maker for the Front Range and the high plains. Now, the computer models are always going to handle this very, very poorly, and we're 6 days away from this. So I'm just giving you a heads up. You'll see a lot of forecasts for Monday right now and Tuesday of next week that really don't have much weather in it, and that could be the case. But we certainly want to circle the early parts of next week on the calendar as a potential weather maker, as these two systems are going to be interacting. After that, another system could come in by the middle of to the end of next week. Yesterday, I touched on La Nina a little bit. I want to circle back to it. Remember yesterday, if you watched, the new forecast for La Nina is along this green line, And anything below the zero line means colder than average sea surface temperatures, which basically means the new update is showing that we're going to be in a La Nina phase through the spring and early summer of 2021, which is bad news for Wyoming, Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, because this is what happened last spring and summer. The sea surface temperatures in the Pacific went cold and we went dry. If we see this again this summer, we're going to be continued about another dry season. The sea surface temperatures continue to show the coolness in the subtropical Pacific. One thing to highlight is that this is the warmest part of the Pacific Ocean. It's like an engine. There's so much energy, so much water vapor going into the air. When you have warm waters, when you have the ocean interactions with the atmosphere, this is the part of the globe, especially when it comes to the weather in North America, that really dictates a lot of our weather and climate. So when it's cold like that, it's almost like turning down the ability for storms to produce abundant rainfall. It just makes the storms less productive. Notice here, though, I want to show you something really interesting. Look at this big blotch of red right here, especially here. Sea surface temperatures have really warmed up over the last few weeks here. However, it doesn't have to do with any sun interactions or any shifting wind patterns. It has to do with being right on top of the ring of fire in the Pacific. There is a high probability that that big warm-up is due to volcanic venting into the Pacific Ocean east of Australia. Now, you may ask yourself, well, if it's going to get really warm here due to volcanic venting, could that eat away the La Nina and erase that forecast for the spring and summer? Maybe, but keep in mind, in addition to these sea surface temperature patterns, there's also circulations that happen during currents in the oceans. So while this warm up here is likely going to continue, whether or not it eats away up here at the La Ninas is something that we're going to watch. Probably not. Now, as we take a look at that same forecast that predicted the La Nina trends through the spring and summer of 2021, the same modeling is predicting the tendencies for precipitation. This is why we're so concerned about California, the Rockies, the desert Southwest, parts of northern New Mexico, and Old Mexico as well. But this area right here, that's just textbook. This is where you're going to get your dryness in a La Nina pattern, and this resembles very closely what happened spring and summer of 2020. The only thing that's going to change that is that if those sea surface temperatures in the Pacific change. If they don't, we're headed towards another dry spring and summer, and we're going to have all of the problems that go along with it. But it's still February. There's still time for things to change. We'll keep an eye on it for you. In the meantime, we're a bit discouraged. Also discouraging, and this is what leads to confidence in our forecast for La Nina to continue, is that we're at the bottom of the solar cycle. We talk about this a lot. These solar cycles really do make a big influence on our weather. When you have a La Nina at the bottom of a solar cycle, they tend to be the strongest. Right at the bottom, and as you get out of the bottom of the solar cycle, you tend to have a couple of La Ninas back to back that could be really strong. The last time that happened was 2011 and 2012, basically in the same curve of the solar cycle. So you tend to have your worst La Ninas and your driest conditions during those time frames. Thanks for listening and watching the Day Weather Podcast. Don't blow away. Talk to you on Wednesday.